instead of the kind of food that we eat at the moment, what we will revert to is the body will be able to sustain itself on clean air, water, and fruit. If we needed protein, the body does need protein because it's physical, so it needs protein to build itself. But what we did on Atlantis was to synthesize seaweed, and we could get all the protein we required from the seaweed. So that's essentially what we're looking at, is our psychic capabilities beyond anything we've even thought of. Ability to communicate psychically with each other, all living things. We will require very little in the way of food. We will be able to clean all pollution of the planet, whether it's nuclear waste, oil, whatever it is, we will be able to destroy it, to transmute it into something else. We will be able to control weather patterns. Whatever it is we need to do, we will be able to do it because we can do it psychically. I mean, if you look at the pyramids, for example, they were built psychically as psychic enhancers. That's the function of the pyramids. We are incapable of building the pyramids now. With all modern technology, all building construction and everything that we've developed, we could not build even a half-scale replica of the pyramids because it's been tried and failed. But the pyramids were built psychically. We could move 40-ton blocks of stone just by thought alone. That's how they were built. So it's those kinds of capabilities that we will have when we return to this final state, or to our natural state. That's what we should be. And this is the direction we are heading in very, very rapidly.
Because I know you just mentioned about food, and there are a few people obviously around who claim that they don't eat any food at all now. Is that the sort of thing that you envisage happening?
Well, I think that's a bit excessive. I mean, I couldn't live without chocolate, for example. And hopefully that'll be the same in the future. I must find a way of synthesizing chocolate psychically. But yes, it is true. As you say, there are people who claim to just exist on fresh air, and several studies I've read into how these people live. Their claims seem to be accurate. And yes, so there's no reason why not. Again, everything is energy. So if you can manipulate energy psychically to create, let's say, proteins or whatever it is the body needs, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to live literally on just on energy itself.
Because I notice in, I think one of your books you say about genetically modified crops and how we should avoid them at all costs. Isn't it a bit difficult to do that in reality, because we don't know half the ingredients of food that we eat half the time anyway?
Well, there is only one answer to it, and that is to insist that supermarkets or wherever it is you buy your food from does not contain genetically modified ingredients. It's simple. I'll give you an example of that. Marks and Spencer's were the first people, I understand, to sell genetically modified tomato puree. And they started selling other genetically modified crops as well. And when people found this out and said to Marks and Spencer's, we do not want you to sell genetically modified foods, Marks and Spencer's stopped selling it. And this is the only way of creating change, is to hit people in the pocket. It's been very successful in Britain, for example. We buy considerably less genetically modified products than other Western countries, because people refuse to buy it. And I mean, let's face it, genetically modified crops have the potential to destroy all life on the planet. And that is a very serious statement, because once the genes get loose into the environment and that pollen gets loose from those plants, gets loose into the environment, they cross with any other similar plant. And therefore you end up with everything being genetically modified. And that is a disaster, because there's no way of controlling it. And especially when you add into this terminator gene, which literally means that the plant will not set seed. it means that nothing is going to grow on the planet. And not only that, with genetically modified crops, there's several studies recently published which show that the bee population is dying as a direct result of genetically modified pollen. Now, if you kill off the bees, it means that nothing gets pollinated. So the only thing that will grow on the planet is genetically modified crops. So if you stop buying genetically modified crops, then they won't grow them. Because everybody has to make a profit. This is what they're doing it for, is make a profit. If you cut off that profit, they'll stop doing it. So this is what we need to do with genetically modified crops, is say, no, I am not going to buy this. I mean, everything that my wife and I buy in terms of food is organic, as far as it is possible to obtain it. And where we can't get organic, then we buy food that is locally produced, locally grown, that we know hasn't been treated by chemicals and certainly isn't genetically modified. That's the only way of achieving it.
Okay. Getting back to the aliens and the Velon and everything, I think I read somewhere that you said that alien abductions have ceased on Earth. Is that correct?
Most abductions were not done by aliens. The vast majority of abductions, whether it's animal mutilation or human abduction, was carried out by the military, the various countries, to make it look like alien abductions were occurring, to give everybody the impression that aliens were nasty. And this isn't the case. Apart from the Velon, all the other races are very friendly towards us and very helpful towards us. Now, the Greys, that race that we know as the Greys, have carried out some human experimentation, but they're mainly carried out on people who were first abducted by the military. So this whole thing is a myth, being perpetuated to make it look like aliens are bad guys. And for whatever reason, there's all sorts of possible reasons why the powers that be in governments want to make it look like there's a nasty situation here. You know, think of movies like Independence Day, or if you go back to the 1950s when we first started seeing science fiction movies, it was always the aliens were bad guys, or the H.G. Wells story of the War of the Worlds. So there's this thing through history, particularly the last 100, 150 years, of trying to say to people, aliens are not good for us. Whereas, in fact, the opposite is true. If you look at the church, the religious side of things, for example, then the church has always maintained that we are the only living things in the universe. The universe was created for humanity. So if aliens exist, then it negates a great deal of religious doctrine. Whereas, in fact, now, as I understand it, the Vatican has come out and said, well, of course aliens exist. I've read transcripts of interviews with senior Vatican officials who have said that, as far as they're concerned, alien races exist within the universe. I think the quote was something like, it would be pretty stupid of God to leave everything to humans. So, of course, these races exist, but the abductions are man-made.
Some of what you say is quite similar to what David Icke is saying. Is he aware of your books, and do you have any contact with him at all?
No, I have no direct contact with him. I know he's commented on my YouTube interviews and supported it. But yes, I have to say I haven't read any of his books for many years. I've only read 2 or 3 of his very early books. I haven't read any of his recent books. But from what I hear and what I understand, then yes, there are a lot of similarities within his views and my own. And all I can say to that is, as far as I'm concerned, I've got my information primarily from the Akashic, and then I've researched whatever it is, and as far as I'm able to research physically into things. And I know that David Icke is doing the same thing. He's researching as much as he possibly can into the physical aspect of research. And inevitably, where you hit upon the truth, then there's only one truth, and therefore the similarities between my work and his work is because there's a truth to it.
Would you say the Velon are the same as the reptilians that David Icke says?
No, no, they're not. That's another very long story,
Right.
which we
No,
don't
obviously,
have time
yeah.
to go into that one. But in fairness, he wasn't wrong with that. The basic concepts of what he was talking about, the reptilian force for, how can I say, removing free choice from people, did exist, but they no longer exist within this universe, and they've been removed, and their influence on humanity has been removed. And therefore, as of at least 15 years ago, I think it is now, then that influence is no longer here. But in terms of how David Icke spoke about it and wrote about it, within that context, then yes, he was essentially correct. But again, that's all been taken care of, and everything, all of that influence has been removed. The reason why this reptilian race was able to do things is because they actually came from a different universe. This is why I say it's a massively long story to go into the explanation of what, why, and how, and all the rest of it. And they should never have been here in the first place, and they've been removed from this universe because the problems they were causing. So they've gone. So no, there's nothing to worry about the reptilian side of things. That's all been sorted. But as I say, within context, then David Icke was correct in what he said.
Because you mentioned earlier about angels and channeling and so on. I just wanted to find out what your belief is about angels. Are they the same as aliens, or just sort of, I think you mentioned as messengers, as in the Bible and so on. What would you say about that?
Well, yes, the original meaning of the word angel, in whichever ancient language you look at, whether it's Latin, Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew, whatever it is, the word angel means messenger. So that's common throughout all ancient languages. And that the messenger was usually between various departments of a priesthood, or from one religious belief system to another. So Christians would talk to Jews, let's say, and the messenger carrying the messages would be an angel. That's the original context for the word angel, or the use of the word angel. But there is a deeper context to it as well. Essentially, there are two different types of soul that exist within this universe. There are those that the Akashic calls non-physical. In other words, these are beings who exist in a pure soul energy form. They have no physical density whatsoever. And these could be considered angels in a biblical context, because they were the first created by the Creator for this universe. And then we have what the Akashic calls semi-physical races. These are the so-called aliens, the non-terrestrial biological entities. Because they have a physical form and a physical presence and a physical density, but it is constructed of very different frequencies to our own. So unless you happen to be particularly psychics, then you won't be able to see these aliens unless they decide to alter their own energy frequencies to make themselves visible to us. So, in terms of souls on Earth, 99% of every single person on the planet, their soul origin is the non-physical races. In other words, 99% of all human beings are closet angels within the biblical context. So, and it leaves 1% then of the population, their soul origin is that of the non-physical races, the semi-physical races. So it's a very complex subject, and to just say aliens are this, angels are this, or angels are that, isn't quite so simple. And what most people consider, we've had this angelic thing going on for about 20 years now, well, I'm talking to my angel and my angel finds me a parking spot or this sort of thing.